Hello and welcome to another Breaking Conservatarian broadcast with your host, your favorite conservatarian, Jeff Charles. And today I have another fire guest for you. He hails from Chicago, Illinois. He is the 18th committee chairperson for the local GOP. He's also looked at running for office, and he's got a whole lot of other titles in his resume. So I give you the great Devin Jones. What's up, brother?
How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm loving this Saturday here in Austin. So yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, good.
Good. Awesome, great. So we've got a lot to talk about. We were talking a little bit before we started recording here, but first, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, obviously, my name is Devin Jones. I'm a United States Navy vet. I'm a former Catholic school teacher. I've taught theology and Latin in the inner city. Former nonprofit leader. I've raised money to help inner city Catholic school kids pay their tuition. What am I doing now? I'm the 18th Ward Republican committee person. I'm working on several different campaigns here in the city of Chicago and in the state of Illinois. I'm the Illinois State Director for the Black Conservative Federation. Basically just trying to answer that call from the Queen to, create a conservative renaissance. So I'm trying to do that as best as I can on the south side of Chicago. So.
Great. And the Queen calling for the conservative renaissance, for those who aren't in the know, is the wonderful, lovely Sonny Johnson.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're all out here trying. So it's an exciting time especially in the world of Black conservatism.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in general, how would you describe your political leanings? Obviously, you're affiliated with the Republican Party, but how would you describe your actual political beliefs?
I would say I'm a conservative. The actual definition of conservative, I'm a big firm believer in the Constitution, equally applied. I try to be a very principled person, and so the best way I can describe it is conservative, but not in the way that a lot of people just throw that to anybody that's Republican is conservative. I don't believe that is accurate at all. Seeing some of these people out here. So yeah.
So what would you say about your beliefs that would separate you from a lot of people who call themselves conservative?
I think for a lot of people, their conservatism is subjective. When we look at cases like Breonna Taylor, when we just look at some of or anything dealing with the Black community, there's always an exception as to why our constitutional rights can be infringed, why we can't have a Second Amendment right, why the state always has to be so overbearing in our community. And there's a lot of Republicans and so-called conservatives who sign on to that stuff. Never having stepped foot in a Black community, never having even met a Black middle class, poor or wealthy person. So I would say that's probably what I have noticed that separates me from a lot of people, is that I'm not a big fan of state intervention in most things, except for just some extraordinary thing, like in the case of war, stuff like that. But I'm just not a big government as the solution ever, and I'm definitely for people exercising their constitutional rights, all of them, to the fullness.
Gotcha. And I think that really goes to what you were saying about applying the Constitution equally. I mean, Sonny always talks about applying conservatism equally. So you can, so it's about being consistent. I mean, like if you're against officers going and arresting people for not wearing masks, but you're forced practices like stop and frisk, which are an obvious violation of the Constitution, at least in the way that it's been used in cities like New York, the way that they've been used. And Chicago, too. But you favor those policies, then you're not being very consistent. And I think a lot of people don't even really realize that they're doing that. But sometimes, if you call their attention to it, not all of them, but a lot of them will at least think and be like, oh, okay, yeah, there is a little bit of a tension between those two. How can I support stop and frisk, but then I'm mad when somebody's getting arrested for not wearing a mask? Yeah.
Because it's not in their face. I think a lot of people don't realize that people's rights are infringed upon if it doesn't directly touch them. And so that's
Right.
why, they're conservative for themselves, but not for those people who live on the other side of town.
Right. Right. And it's interesting too, because like I was saying, when a lot of them are exposed to it, then they start to think of it, but then others
Yes.
just kind of dig into what they've always been taught. And
Yeah.
it's hard to break past a lot of that. I mean, obviously you can't win everybody over,
Right.
but yeah, it's just interesting how that dichotomy is there.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to also ask you, actually, yeah, let's just dive on in. I mean, you were
Yeah.
running for office. You were
Hmm.
running for state senate, right?
State rep,
State representative.
31st district. My current state rep has been there. I'm 34. She's been there 35 years. So longer
Oh,
than I've been
wow.
alive. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So yeah, so tell me about what happened with that. Tell me what we were talking about before. If you could go into some of that and tell the story, and I'll ask questions from there.
Sure. So here, the process is that you first petition. You need about 500 signatures. In my district, I needed a minimum of 500 signatures, and I collected about a little more than 750 signatures. Um, I did it all in about a month, in like a 4-week period of time, because that was the deadline that I had. I had been trying to contact the Republican Party from about September until almost to the end of October, the middle of October. So it was
And
like a
this would be
month and a half.
your local Republican Party, right?
The state, yes, I contacted the Chicago Republican Party, which is like our municipal party. It's really more like a club. And I contacted the county party, which under state law, I know I'm getting kind of technical, but under
No, that's
state
fine.
law, your county is your party, and they kind of federate into the state Republican Party. So I contacted the state, the county, and the city to see
Okay.
what I needed to do, what was open. I floated around the idea of running for a U.S. rep, and I wanted to talk to them to see, based on the things that I felt like I could offer my community, which was best. And nobody ever contacted me. I landed on state rep, and they finally got in touch with me. They gave me this list of all of the Republicans that were supposedly in my district. And it
Mhm.
turns out that a little more than 250 of them were not in the district. They had an old list, or I don't know where they got that list from. And so as the process goes, the state pulls people off and reviews your signatures and stuff. And I ended up
Right.
being short of the minimum amount. And so then I wasn't put on the ballot in the primary. I was put on the ballot for Republican committeeman for my ward because I had enough signatures. I know the boundaries of my ward, but our other districts are so gerrymandered that my
Right.
grandmother lives on one side of the street. She's in one district. The people on the other side are in another district. And
Mm.
sometimes it's not clear based on the maps if you're actually getting the correct resident in the district. So anyway, I notified them that I wanted to be slated. And when the time for slating came, months, like right after the
Really
primary.
quick, can you
Yeah.
explain what slating is?
So slating is when the party decides to put people on the ballot. So if they didn't have anybody running the primary, or God forbid somebody passes away, drops out, whatever, then the party has a mechanism where they can put someone on the ballot in those empty areas. And
Okay.
so the committeeman, which is what I am, the committeemen who run through, or who I guess that district runs through their area, they get a weighted vote to decide if this person should be slated or not slated. In the case of me and several other people who were trying to get on the ballot during that slating process, they just decided weren't going to slate anybody.
Mm. Well, and so what was the reason? Why didn't they want to slate anybody?
So the reason that I was given by several different people was that certain people within the party didn't want to run a bunch of candidates in the city and certain districts within the city because they didn't want the Democrats running people in the suburbs and in those rural areas of the state of Illinois. So there's been this long-standing, like, weird, I don't know what you would call it, agreement, treaty between the corrupt Democrats and the rhinos that the Democrats never follow because they now have a super majority in the state house. But for some reason, these Republican leaders decide that they're gonna stick with the same old, and they get shafted every time. And so there was at least 10 of us, I want to say, that were looking to be slated in the city, and none of us were slated.
So they didn't slate any candidates in the city.
They so only if the district didn't go into the suburbs. So there's a guy running for the U.S. House in the 4th Congressional District. He got slated, but it's because only his district is only in the city. So the ward committeemen in the city were able to vote him in. But the people in the suburbs, so I mentioned it's a county party, so it includes the city and some of the suburbs. And the suburbs really run the county party. There's no leadership from the city in the county party, which is odd because we represent something like 60% of all the vote in the state of Illinois. But anyway, so they decided if any of the districts ran into any of the suburbs, they weren't even going to put it up for a vote. So I didn't even get a chance to be slated. You know, I would have even accepted an up or down vote. Nope, we're not going to do it. Something, you know, just to say we went through the process. Maybe you don't think I'm a good candidate, whatever. But they just didn't even show up to the table to do it, to slate people.
And just to make sure I understand, this is for districts that may fall in the city and the suburbs. They didn't want to slate people. Okay.
Yeah. So I live at the very southwest edge of the city. So I mean, you could walk to the suburbs from my house. I mean, I'm maybe 4 blocks from several different suburbs in any direction. So so of course my district is half city, half suburbs. Part of my district actually goes through Inglewood, and some of those places that you hear about on the news, because the way that they gerrymander stuff, they gerrymander all our districts so that there's a certain amount of majority Black districts. There's a certain amount of, you know, we choose our voters here. The voters do not choose their representatives.
I see. Okay. And so in those districts where they didn't slate anybody, the Democrats just ran unopposed, basically, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Every single one of them. I mean, we have several districts in the city where the Democrats are unopposed. And the most famous one, which I was talking to you about before we started, is the district to the north of me, Mike Madigan. He's the Speaker of the House, the State House, and he's also the chairman of the Illinois Democrat Party. He's up under federal investigation. He's been implemented in a bribery scheme where our electric company had to pay $200 million in fines to the federal government, and they implicated him in this massive bribery scheme, and he's running unopposed. I mean, that's a seat we could have easily taken. We have so many corrupt Democrats and Republicans, but you know, this is a Democrat-run state and city. We have so much corruption, and we could have been knocking some of these people out, or at least, you know, shining a light on the corruption. But I mean, when you don't show up to the table, they're just sailing back in the office, and we sit back and complain when we don't even come to the table.
So let me ask you this. So as far as the GOP goes at the local or at the county level, I mean, if they're not competing in Chicago, what exactly are they doing? Are they only supporting candidates who are running in the suburbs then?
That's a good question. A lot of what they, you know, what I see, and I hate to just be totally down on the Republican Party, because we do have some really solid Republicans. A lot of our women are the suburban women federations and different things like that. And some of the people on the northwest side of Chicago, they're really solid. But as a state party and many of our county parties, It's like a social club more than winning elections and pushing policy. We're very reactionary. They don't want to, even the candidates, the person who's running for U.S. Senate, Mark Curran, they don't support him almost at all. It's him and people who believe in him, and he's running statewide for the Republican Party, and he didn't have to. He's actually a walkaway. He used to be a Democrat. He was a Lake County sheriff, ran as a Democrat, switched over while he was sheriff to Republican because he saw how far to the left the Democrat Party was going. And obviously he's been getting beat up by the Democrats, but the Republican Party doesn't even really actively support him. I'm not sure what they're doing. You can't get a call back. I'm a committee person, so that means I vote in the convention and all this other stuff, and I can barely I've sent maybe 40 emails to different people at the county and the state level, and I could barely get an email back. It'll be months. It will take months for them to respond.
Well, so it sounds like, and again, just like you said, I'm sure there's tons of good people in the GOP there, but it sounds like, if people are trying to run for office as a Republican, a lot of them are just kind of on their own. Would that be a fair way to characterize it?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you run in as a Republican in this state, especially if you live in Chicago, if you're Black, any of those, and I'm not saying they're racist. I'm just saying if you're a Black Republican and you're running in Chicago, they are not. They're just going to look at you and say, "Good luck."
Wow. I talked to last week. I talked to a guy in Baltimore, and he's running for city council. And he said that that's kind of how it was, at least at first, but that they've been kind of coming around a little bit more and giving them more support. I also heard that from the candidate who's running for mayor in Baltimore. But it seems like Chicago's still a different animal as far as the GOP is concerned.
Absolutely.
Are there people? Are there a lot of people in the local GOP that are trying to push them to go more towards the city, or is it just does that just get squashed, or?
No, there's a lot of people who you find a lot of grassroots people. You'll find a lot of committeemen in the suburbs. They have townships. We have wards in the city. You will find some people who have some sort of position. You'll find people who are Republican politicians in office who do try to call out people like our state chairman, in Cook County, our county chairman. But it's really hard because nobody really wants the job of state chairman. Nobody wants that because there's so much corruption, there's so much nepotism, there's just so much swampiness going on in the party that a lot of people are like, I have a life. People own businesses, people have to work. They don't have time to be playing politics when this is about the survival of communities. Many of us who are serious about this stuff, for us, we're looking at the survival of our community. We're looking at more and more money being sucked out of our pockets and our homes with high taxes and gas taxes and different things like that. And so no one has time to play the games that some of the leadership in the Republican Party is trying to play, because we're raising kids, we're taking care of communities. We have an epidemic it is an epidemic of people being shot in our city. So we're looking at those things. We're trying to create solutions to some of the problems in our city that do not involve extra government. We're not here to play games. And so people just they do as much as they can to fight the system, but it's just so entrenched, and many of these people in leadership have been there since I was first able to vote in 2004 or before. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to kind of ask about that, like how long have these people been in charge? So, what would it take for the GOP in your area to actually get it together? I guess you'd have to be able to get yourself elected to the positions, basically, right? Or
pretty much
somehow, because they're not going to change their minds.
No. What it really will take is we need a lot of candidates who are okay with doing things on their own, with just being grassroots candidates. We really need, I would say, the RNC to put some pressure on the state party, because I can't imagine that, you know, the RNC is happy with election cycle after election cycle, Illinois not even being on the table. When
I hope
Illinois
not,
used
but
to, you know, Illinois used to be a purple state. You know, it could go either way, and now we're just so far in the blue category that this is the heartland. You know what I'm saying? We're not just Chicago. We're farms, and we are everything that America has to offer. And the fact that we're only an option for Democrats for one side of the aisle, I don't see how the RNC and national leadership is okay with that. You know, so it takes pressure from the grassroots. It'll take pressure from the top. I think it's really going to take a lot of Republicans in the state of Illinois, those people who go to the ballot box, to start saying, you know what, I'm not giving you any money until you start winning something in Chicago and Cook County. I'm not giving, if you keep losing the Chicagoland area, then you're not getting anything from me. I'm not volunteering. I'm not giving you money. I will give directly to a candidate that I find on the south side, north side, west side, wherever in Chicago. So I think that's what it'll take is once people stop tithing to that, or to the state party, they'll get their act together real quick, because they need that money.
They do. They do. Yeah. See, money seems to always be the motivator here.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, that story is just crazy. Just the way everything went down. I mean, it's just, wow. I mean, so when it comes to the people who are there in Chicago, I mean, you've been knocking on a lot of doors. You said you've been knocking on thousands of doors.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you being received? I mean, when they find out you're a Republican, how does the conversation go from there?
You know, it's usually pretty good. I go to a lot of, I go to Inglewood, which, you know, if you listen to the news, they classify it as one way. So I go out to the wealthy black suburbs, wealthy white suburbs. I'm all over the place. And many people, these people that are on Twitter that say, oh, I get called to Uncle Tom and I get called this. I've never experienced that. I get a lot of black Democrats that say, you're a Republican? Good. We got one over there. You know, stuff like that. I'm very well received. Okay. The candidates, they want to talk to me about why I'm Republican, why I'm supporting this candidate. I've had Democrats put Republican candidate signs in their yard just from talking to me. I have, I can think of this one guy, he was sitting on his porch, and I was walking by, I said, hey, you know, I just want to pass you some information. He said, Democrat or Republican? I said, Republican. And he looked at me and he was like, y'all brothers? And I said, yeah. And so he took the information. He had a whole conversation. And he said, you know, we need people on, but in that conversation, he said, we need people on both sides of the aisle. You know, I like what this man is standing for. I'm going to consider it. Tell him to stop on by. So I'm very, it's all in how you talk to people. You know, these people are my neighbors. So I'm not going to say nobody lives on the plantation. You know, we all free. We're all homeowners. You know, so I talk to them about the issues that they're facing. And if you keep it on issues, you don't get bogged down in all that weird slave talk, the Blexit stuff. You know, I don't have that issue.
You know, it's funny, and there was a reason why I asked that. One, because I already knew the answer, but again, I was talking to Giovanni Patterson, who's running in Baltimore for city council. I asked him the exact same question, and he gave me that answer. I mean, and you see people on Twitter, they're always afraid, you know, if black Republicans go into these areas, they're just going to get called coon, they're going to get called Uncle Tom or tap dancer or what have you. And I tell them, no. I mean, if you come at them a certain way, they're going to call you that.
You get called what you act like.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean, chances are, I mean, if you're getting called that, 9 times out of 10, it's because you're coming at them either with plantation talk or you're talking down to them or you're condescending or whatever. Yes. And I know that there's people who get called that don't deserve it. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody deserves it. But in general, I mean, most of us don't. Well, most of us who have a certain approach don't get that response, even if they disagree with some of our views. So let me ask you this then. I mean, because people are open, I mean, at least to hearing you out.
Yeah.
I mean, other than reforming the GOP where you're at, I mean, how do you think that Black conservative candidates like yourself can actually get into positions where you're getting elected? Because obviously the GOP isn't really interested in helping you right now.
Sure. You know, I think that for so long in places like Chicago, people haven't, the conservative movement hasn't really engaged in the battlefield of ideas. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't even know what conservatives stand for. You know, my whole family lives in my neighborhood, and I was having a conversation with my mother one time, and she thought Republicans were the ones that raised taxes. You know, because
Oh.
here's the thing: if you don't show up to the table, somebody else is going to tell your story every
Yep.
single time. And so they in her mind, everything bad is Republican and everything good is Democrat, because that's how it always has been. And so I think it will take several election cycles. It will take people. I'm not saying I'm the prototype, but people like me who have a heart for the community and a heart for doing political education. We're going to have to start going into school. I'm a deputy registrar, so I can register people to vote under
Okay.
state law. So different things like that, doing these type of political educations, going here in Cook County, in our jail, in the county jail, they're going to have polling places. So that means I need to be there educating people on what the issues are, and not telling them how to vote, but at least giving them, you know, both sides of the table, or both, you know, giving them an option of different things to vote for. So we need to start having policy conversations, requesting to be in these different meetings, going to city hall meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and making our case. And so it might be 10 years down the line where you will really start to see Black conservatives in Chicago and Cook County start to win some offices. You know, I'm not saying, you know, the next time I'm run, I'm definitely going to win, because for
Right.
so long, only one side has offered any solution. They've also been the problem, but they offer a solution to their own problem. And we haven't been there. So it's just going to take, as long as it's taken us to get into this mess, it might take that amount of time to get us out of it.
Yeah. Well, I hope it doesn't take that long, because that'd be like over
Well,
100
yeah.
years. but no, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But you touched on something really good there. I mean, at the beginning of what you were saying about, as far as, you know, what your mom believed about Republicans. And the thing is, a lot of Republicans rightly complain that Black people don't really understand what Republicans stand for, because the left has been lying to them about it.
Right.
Yeah, and they're right. The Democrats have been lying, and they're wrong to do that. They're deceiving people.
Right.
However, they missed the other part of that. I mean, if you don't brand yourself, and it applies to business, it applies to, you know, your personal brand, it applies to politics. If you don't brand yourself, somebody else is going to do it for you, and you may not like how that turns out. And that's what's happened here. I mean, the GOP abdicated its role in competing for the votes to actually explain what conservatism is. So of course the Democrats lied about it. I mean, it's easy. You don't have to work at it, because you know that the other person is not going to show up. It's like having a criminal trial and the defense attorney never shows up, and it's just a prosecution. Well, I mean, how's that going to go? I mean,
Well, and it's silly for us to even complain about that, because what do you think, they were going to actually tell the truth? I mean, they're trying to win an election. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to throw everything at a wall and see what sticks. So if you're not there to wipe it off the wall, then guess what? Everything sticks. And so you lose. You lose by default.
Yeah. You're basically handing it to them. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, in general, I mean, this can apply to to the local races or state level or whatever. I mean, what is the one or two things that you think that the GOP or the conservative movement overall needs to do better when it comes to engaging with the Black community? You touched on this a little bit, but yeah.
You know, I think that well, first of all, just showing up. I mean, Jesus Christ, with anything at this point, showing up with something is better than nothing. Yeah, it's a pretty low bar. But I think having conversations with those of us who live in the Black community and consider ourselves Republican, or, you know, want to affiliate with the Republican Party, actually listening and saying, well, what are your issues? People make it seem like the issues in the Black community are just so different than the issues that every American faces. I live in a community of Black homeowners. I live in a community where Black people are trying to send their kids to private schools because the public school system is just terrible. I live in a community where people are concerned that the gas tax has doubled, in the last year, and then it automatically goes up anywhere from 1 to 7 cents every year. I live in a community where we're concerned with the fact that there's an income tax hike on the constitutional amendment on the ballot. We are concerned with the exact same things that every American faces. Poor people, regardless of race, all have the same concern. Middle class people all have the same concern.
Facts.
And wealthy people all have the same concern. So it's not like just because the color of my skin I'm not that, I'm not that much darker than the average white person, but it's not like because I'm Black or, my family is Black that we have these weird issues that only affect us. I'm a middle class American, Black American, proud Black American, who has the same issues as any other middle class trying to make it in coronavirus and all these other things. So I think if they would just message the same things that the entrepreneurship, owning businesses, home ownership, home equity, different things like that, access to capital and credit, if you market that in the Black community, you'll win elections. But if all you do is plantation talk or nothing at all, it's either nothing or plantation, and neither of those really work for me because I didn't grow up on the plantation.
Right.
I don't know anything about being a slave. So Candace Owens is not gonna win elections in the Black community. So moving away from that and moving to things that actually affect the people in the community you're talking to, that's what's going to get that's what'll help us win elections. That's what'll help spark a conversation. Like I said, I walk through every community, every shade, every color, every creed, and I've never had an argument with anybody. I've stood out and talked to protesters outside of Trump rallies and stuff here. I've never had a Biden person spit on me or call me out of my name. None of that stuff. It's all in how you talk to people.
Sure. Yeah. And, I'm glad that you brought up the, Black people at different stages. I mean, because I think a lot of times when people think of the Black community, they just think of the hood. And the fact is, a lot of us live out in the suburbs, and there's even some Black people living out in rural areas, and they're at different levels of financial income. And, if you go to like a middle class or upper middle class Black person and say, hey, we're going to do law and order and prevent crime, but they're not living in a neighborhood where there's a lot of crime, that doesn't mean anything. Right. But you just mentioned, you got to worry about a gas tax and another increase on the income taxes. Yes. These are things that Republicans can speak to that are going to cause Black people to raise some eyebrows, as long as they can get past that stigma of the whole racist and all that stuff. But the way you get past that stigma is by doing what you just said, showing up. Right. If the Republican Party gets to know Black people, like let's say there's a Republican candidate. Let's even say it's a white Republican candidate going into a Black area. If he shows up consistently, it's not going to matter when CNN comes out and calls him a racist, because Black people are going to say, no, I know that guy. That guy's, we've had conversations. I know that guy's not racist. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's not a racist, so I'm still going to hear him out. Right. That's the way that you break past that. The left is never, ever going to stop calling conservatives racist. But when conservatives...
Because it works.
It works. Why. And the reason it works is because of the absence. Yes. I mean, when there's the absence there, then of course they can, just like we said before, they're going to lie about you. And if you're not there to defend yourself and to go on the offense too, when you're physically there, it's not going to work. The attacks don't work as well when somebody actually has sat down with you, had some coffee with you, or had a beer or whatever. They're not going to believe it.
Consistently. Yes. Not just what, we accuse Democrats of coming around every 2 to 4 years, but we do the same thing. We do the exact same thing. And we're there. The problem is they're actually good at it because they govern here. They're in power. They're the mayor. They're the alderman. They're the state rep, the state senator, the U.S. rep, the U.S. senator. And we aren't. So we actually are the ones who only show up every 2 to 4 years.
Right. So yeah. So let me ask you this: when you've shown up and knocked on doors, and you tell me you're a Republican, I mean, I know those conversations go well, but do they ever tell you that they've talked to other Republicans who have come around, or are you like the only one that they've seen, or a little bit of both?
No, usually they do not. There haven't been other Republicans coming around. Not in the areas that I've gone into. Like I said, I do spend some time in the suburbs. Most of my time is spent in black suburbs, Inglewood, black areas of the city of all economic backgrounds. But typically, no Republican has come around. So it's kind of like, what? You're a Republican? And then, that sparks off a good conversation. It's never a bad conversation.
Mhm.
So no, it's odd. I don't know why we're not going, especially now when Democrats are kind of not going out at all. They are not doing door to door anything in our
Right.
state. So
And when you're going door to door, that's for Mark Curran, right? Because you're his coordinator.
several different people. There's a
Okay.
black Republican candidate here running for state Senate, Eric Wallace. I've gone out. Oh my gosh, I've probably knocked on at least 1,000 doors for him. Uh, I've knocked on doors for probably 10 different candidates. We have a guy, he's a white guy, but he's running for state's attorney here in Cook County. So I've delivered
Mhm.
probably 150 yard signs for him. So a bunch of different candidates. A lot of it is Mark Curran, who's running for U.S. Senate, and then Eric Wallace, who's running for state Senate out in the south suburbs.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're door walking or door knocking for
Yeah,
a few different candidates.
yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah. And then of course our U.S. My U.S. House candidate Philomise White, who is an African American. She's black. She's a black Republican.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like there's like a shortage of black conservative candidates who want to run. It's just a matter of them getting the support that they need. It sounds like.
Yeah, yep. Actually, Will County, which I think is the third largest county in the state of Illinois, the chairman of the Republican Party in Will County is a black guy, George Pearson, U.S. Navy vet. So there are a lot of us out here. There is no shortage of black Republicans in the state of Illinois and in the Chicagoland area. I mean, we're all over the place, but we just haven't been activated and galvanized in the right way
Mm,
because we have a dysfunctional state party and a lot of us have dysfunctional county parties. I'm not going to include Will County in that because George Pearson is a phenomenal chairman, and he's undertaken he's building a coalition here called the Illinois Black Republican Coalition to remedy some of the stuff that we're talking about. To
that
pull,
was going to be my next
yeah,
question.
yes, yeah. So
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Yeah.
yeah. So I'm actually helping him with that. I'm a part of that team. There's several people on that team. Kevin Suggs is the co-chairman. He's one of our township committeemen out in the south suburbs. And so what they're trying to do is to find and cultivate black Republican candidates,
Mm,
people to run for committee people, because we do need that the committeeman position is really the governing body of the party. So that's
okay.
where all your change is going to be made, is if we have committeemen who will speak up at our state convention and at our county conventions and stuff like that and say, here are the things that we should be doing. Here's what our platform should be. And then also, they're trying to raise money for candidates because, I mean, it is just about 100% guaranteed that you are not getting any money, no volunteers, nothing, if you're a black Republican trying to run for office. And so that's what this coalition is trying to remedy, is us pooling our resources and really kind of doing it on our own.
Right, right. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's encouraging. I mean, because
Yeah,
people got the idea to start doing something on their own,
right.
and really, I mean, that's conservative. I mean, if the party's not going to help you out, then you do it
Right.
yourself. So I really,
Right.
I'll be keeping an eye on that. I hope that it
Sure.
gets really, I hope it galvanizes a lot of people, because I'm sure that there's people just like you who are craving something like this.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I could see how that would be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to ask you about, I mean, we've been focusing on local politics because that's really where I like to focus anyway, but have you had a chance to take a look at the Platinum Plan, or have you read it at all, or?
I have.
What are your thoughts on that? I'm about to get you in trouble.
You know, we haven't yet. I mean, we kind of stopped talking about it, right? So I feel like it's not really a thing to me. I don't I don't know what to say about it. I know I'm kind of fumbling over my words. I've read it.
Okay.
It sounds good. I feel like a lot of it is stuff that has already been accomplished in things like opportunity zones and some of these other things that have been put out. I guess I'm happy that the Klan is going to be considered a hate group, but I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's pandering. I hate to say it. I hate to say it like that, but I feel like because there's what has come out since. Like I know that there was this skeleton laid out, but now tell me, what is the Small Business Administration doing now to implement it? What's the Department of Commerce, Treasury, Justice? Where can I go to access the stuff that was put out in this Platinum Plan? Or are we only going to be able to access it after November 4th? You know, I'm just kind of like, I don't talk about it much because I'm really not understanding. We haven't talked about it since. It didn't come up in the debates. It didn't, the vice presidential or the presidential debates. I mean, we just they had that big rally. That was it. And why should I be talking about it if the people who put it out aren't talking about it?
Yeah. I've been hearing that from a lot of people. And there was actually a Zoom call on it that was held by Black Voices for Trump, and I sat in on that. But it doesn't seem like there was really a big push for it. I mean, the call itself didn't really give more detail on it.
Yeah.
And I know that they can't lay out every single detail. I get that.
Sure.
But I think people want more of an idea as to what this is going to do and how you're going to accomplish those goals, because the document that they released, all those goals I like. Those are good objectives to if they achieve those objectives, it's going to help the Black community immensely. But without at least having an idea of how they plan on accomplishing it, really hard to sell. It's very hard to really get people on board with it, because the first reaction is going to be, oh, it's pandering, especially since they just released it 30 days before the election. Right. So,
and I mean, haven't talked about it since. If it had been a consistent talking about it, here's another layer of the onion that we're unraveling, you know, something. It's just kind of like, oh, big rally, Platinum Plan. All right, next, you know, fly on Mike Pence's head. You know, now we moved on to that.
Yes.
So, just like, I mean, he got more press coverage than the Platinum Plan. So I'm just confused as to what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of get your quick thoughts on that, because I mean, there's a lot of conversation about it. I'll probably do a video myself about it, but I like that it was at least an attempt, but there needs to be more
absolutely
with it.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's more than the additional government that we're getting from the other side. So I mean, at least from the looks of it, it looks like it's going to free people up to open businesses. It's specifically targeted to Black people, you know, so I do like that, because there have been policies that have been adversely affecting us specifically. So something I'm of the full belief that we need things directly targeted to us to undo 60 plus years of redlining and Jim Crow and all of these other things. So, I mean, it's a nice try. I hope that maybe some more meat is put behind it, or that it's just talked about more, you know, so that it doesn't look like, oh, we just threw something out there to pander and now we're not going to talk about it anymore. Right.
Exactly. All right. Well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you joining me. If you want to give out your social media, let people know where they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So on Twitter, you can find me at Devio, DEVIO. You can also follow me on my 18th Ward Twitter. It's 18th Ward 18th 18th Ward GOP. And on Facebook, you can also catch me at 18th Ward GOP. I have a webpage, which is mostly if you live in the 18th Ward. It's probably not really relevant if you live outside, unless you want to donate money. That's devinjones.org. You can email me, devin@devinjones.org. I'm open to any policy ideas, any ideas that you have about reaching out to Republicans, independents, Democrats. You want to find out how the Republican Party works. You just need somebody to talk, to ask questions with about policy and things like that. I'm open to all of that. So never hesitate to contact me, drop into my DMs with appropriate things. So anything, I'm an open book.
All right, great. Well, thanks for joining me, and I'm sure we'll have you back on again. But
Definitely.
Till then, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.